You're listening to the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Sciano. As a service provider, I work with people on projects that span several months at a time, upwards to a year even. And these projects have multiple components to them. There's creation of assets and launches, there's content, there's team members, there's numerous pieces and strategies that all need to work in unison during our time together. There's just a lot of moving parts and a lot to keep tabs on. So feedback sessions are a valuable part of the process for both the client and myself. In my world, many times a project client turns into an ongoing retainer model client. So it's good to pause and check in before shifting into the next phase of working together. These feedback sessions that I hold, they are in depth and they differ from testimonials in both the experience and in their use. But many times testimonials do come out of them. The feedback sessions are more like a launch debrief, which we have talked about many times here on the podcast. For me, these sessions are the epitome of relationship building. I'm in it for the long game. And in my work, I'm building partnerships with clients I know, those whom I've helped to form their brands and their strategy, and clients who I've invested a lot of time and energy to. My goal is to keep working with them. There's magic in the ideas and more success because we know each other well. There's value in the rapport that we build. And, to not always be starting over, to get inside the mind and workings of a business owner, as well as a brand, that helps me do what I do at a high level. There is power in connection. So today, I'm taking you inside my client feedback sessions and sharing why you want to do them and tools that can help you facilitate them. The long game is client feedback beyond testimonials. Do you talk with your clients, those you coach, your group program members, to get feedback at any point in your relationship? And I mean getting feedback beyond asking for a testimonial. I'm referring to feedback where you make yourself available to hear the experience from your customer's point of view. Are you doing that? I recently did a feedback session with a client after a long-term project. And as we shift into our next stage of business together, a review of everything was in order. So feedback sessions can be done at the end of a time together, at the end of a year, or in this case, we held the session at the beginning of the year after the client took a holiday and had some time to reflect. And in all transparency, my client initiated this particular feedback session because they did have time off and they did reflect, and we are going forward. So it was the perfect time to connect. And I'm really glad they did, because not only did we connect, but it inspired all of these thoughts and for me to bring this episode to you. So thank you. So client feedback, it's important. We understand that. And it can really help you understand your clients' experiences, how they experience your products and your services. It can provide insight into what your customers value most about working with you. And it can also identify areas that may need improvement. In my recent feedback session, it was so good to hear what the client felt worked well. And because we did the feedback session on Zoom, there's some video testimonial footage, right? A win there. But it's also good to hear from the client's perspective about what could have been better. And, this one can be humbling if you hear feedback that doesn't align with your intentions. But, that's because we're so attached to our work and our offers. But what's interesting, and you may find as well, is that I've done this same offer with multiple business owners. So what could have been improved for this one client worked really well for other clients. So it's good to keep in mind when getting feedback that, impressions and experiences are individual and really client specific. So I mentioned a testimonial here, and that's a bonus that I'm going to be able to pull from this process. There were some really great things about our work together that the client emphasized. But I want to point out that client feedback and testimonials, although both insights from your customer, they serve two distinct purposes in your business, and you use them differently, and how you go about obtaining them is different as well. Client feedback is used for your information to improve or make adjustments in your business. The feedback is real world data that can inform your direction moving forward. Client feedback is internal. Testimonials, on the other hand, those are these positive statements or praise for you and the work that you do. And they're used in a marketing capacity as social proof on your website, sales pages, or even in ads. And their purpose is to build trust and credibility with those you interact with. Testimonials are external. So, we're really emphasizing here the internal work right now. Client feedback conversations can shed so much light on your process and can help you improve your business in a number of ways. I even encourage my clients who have higher ticket signature courses to incorporate client feedback sessions into the end of course process. So sitting down for 15 or 20 minutes with someone, who's invested in your program can be really insightful as you continue to offer and improve your course going forward. And it's also a wonderful touch point to the relationship. You get to know their goals and more. One caveat here though is that you've got to watch your numbers. Like, this is for small groups and high ticket. Otherwise, you can get overwhelmed. And conversely, if you have a larger group, you can maybe earmark some students that you want to connect with. So if you decide to hold client feedback sessions, there are some best practices that you can put into place to support a conversation for when the time comes. One thing that I do at the start of all my client projects that really works to inform a later feedback session is I provide a detailed proposal that outlines all of the goals and the deliverables. This document is a full thinking through of the project and something that I refer back to during the project timeline to stay focused and on track. So referring to this at the end of the project, it can be used as a checklist of sorts for the feedback conversation. If you are doing this with course or group program, you can also use your syllabus of lessons as a guide. And another best practice is to always go into your client feedback sessions with a positive mindset. Because yes, it happens, right? We encounter trying relationships sometimes, whether a private client or a student relationship. I had one client who I let know that I wasn't going to re-sign to continue our working together once the initial time was finished. And I let that client know with a generous amount of time for them to plan. But the client took, my, hey, we're not a right fit, really personally. And it was a really difficult last month of working together. Nonetheless, I did a feedback session to wrap it all up, and I really directed that conversation on the positive. I was professional in my approach, I used my checklist, and I outlined all the good and what we had accomplished, right? Coming into that conversation prepared and with a positive approach versus an argumentative one resulted in a feedback session that ended that relationship in a really great way. And this happens with courses too. Sometimes there are times where students overstep their bounds in a group setting. I've seen all kinds of behavior happen inside of courses. And you can still do a feedback session to understand who they are and where they're coming from, and take that feedback in. So, there really are some worthwhile reasons why you want to have client feedback sessions. All right, number one, you get to hear what's working and what, if anything, needs improving. It's about specificity. It allows for you to pinpoint areas to work on in your offers or in your process or in your course materials. Are there areas in the course or the relationship that were unclear? Was there a need for a deeper dive into an area? And what really went well that you can springboard off of? Because we are so inside of what we do. Getting this external feedback can show us ways and specific places that we can improve. All right, client feedback can also help you identify patterns that your customers are experiencing that can inform decisions about future products or services you can create. So this is developing what's next based on data. Did everyone say they needed a little something extra to support the work or the learning that you brought in? That is a tip-off to what you can create. And I do just want to say a word of caution here, though. Feedback from clients, it's very individual. And it's based on their personal business situations and experience. So getting feedback from one client and instantly leaping into action to create a new program or make drastic changes, that isn't always the best move. We're talking about patterns here. When multiple clients voice a need or support an idea that you've been tossing about. It's about being thoughtful with the feedback that you receive. And lastly, this is what I see as the biggest benefit to seeking out client feedback. Doing so is relationship building. Setting time aside to listen to the experiences and the ideas and sometimes even the emotions of your clients, It's a thoughtful approach to business. It's an opportunity for them to hear you as well. And that is coming together in community, and it leads to better understanding and better communication, which ultimately leads to success. So whether you know what's next with your client or, you're doing a feedback session to mark a definitive end, spending time talking that paves the way for forward motion. And in many cases, it leads to increased customer retention. And, I want to point out too that these relationships I'm creating, they also feed me. When I get off of a client feedback call, there is energy coursing through me. I love the partnerships that I've created with brilliant people. They allow me to be creative, to express myself, to use my smarts and my strategies, and my clients are out in the world and they're interacting on so many levels. And to be able to be a part of their work, a part of spreading their message, that's really valuable to me. And their personal insight on working together and my process, that is valuable to me. So how I want to work is with connection and flow. So this totally supports that. So give some thought to how you can incorporate client feedback into what you do. It's a valuable tool that can inform what we do in our businesses, improve our offerings, and strengthen relationships with your customers. All right, guys. That's a little food for thought this week. Have a good one. Thanks for joining me today. You can access more information, links mentioned in this episode, and the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on and leave a review. Both of these make a really big difference. All right, until next time, keep playing the long game.